Well, hey, welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. We're here every Sunday at 5 o'clock, Mondays at 4 o'clock right here on A Valid Answer, or you can also find us on kerncast.com, or search for us on Kerncast. Tell us who we are. I am a conservative capitalist pastor, and you are?
A socialist liberal atheist.
That's
so
right.
There you go.
So tell us what happened. There's a discussion that kind of happened online that kind of sparked what we're about to talk about today. Tell us what was going on. You were part of a.
Well, actually, it's one of our friends, I think, that we have in common. Someone who knows you better than me.
Oh, really?
But he put up a post talking about how New York passed a law legalizing, or I should say, codifying into law.
Yep.
Abortion all the way up until the moment of birth, basically. Now, the justification for the law, which was codified in New York. It's a reaction, probably, it seems, to the Supreme Court.
They feel that the Supreme Court's going to probably swing way
outlaw
more to the
abortion
right, across the nation, so that them leave it back in the hands of the states, and then they want their state. Yeah.
And in order to have an abortion, basically right before the moment of birth, which I think we all kind of agree that sounds a little absurd, but the life of the mother has to be in jeopardy. Now,
gotcha.
All kinds of issues. Now, even though I am very much pro-choice, I have some concerns over the law, although it seems like it's a teeny tiny percentage of cases, if ever or at all.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
I can't think of a scenario where it would be done. I just can't think of one myself. Now, I'm not an OBGYN or anything like that. No. And I also want to say that before we plunge into the topic of abortion, by the way, a topic that we have avoided for nearly a year, is I really think this is a topic that should be addressed by women and decided by women. Now, I know I am a man, and I think as a man I'm entitled to an opinion, but I don't necessarily feel this is an issue where men should be pontificating to women. Now, that's a personal take on it.
I think there's a great logical fallacy in that, because then if you apply that across the board to every other subject, to where if you don't have any influence or any say in it, then you don't have any say. That would apply to a lot of different things. That would open a whole. You don't play football, so you can't have anything to say about what happens in the rules of football.
Well, yeah, but football isn't exactly an intimate subject like abortion.
Right, but I'm just saying that you open the door to that, and I think it's a possible logical fallacy on that.
But this isn't a hill that I'm prepared to die upon at this moment.
Right.
But today we are going to talk about abortion, and we're going to tackle it. And I tell you, that Facebook discussion got a little heated at times.
Yes, it did. And I got a little bit angry and wanted to respond, and then I really got angry. Then I'm like, wait, this is not going to help. This is not what we're trying to do. This is not what we're trying to avoid that in this discussion here. We're trying not to be, we want to approach this with a reasonable, logical, non-emotional. That's what we're aiming to do. And so that means there might be certain things that we're not going to take on, where there might be certain things that, who are you responding to? Is everything going okay?
Yeah, I'm responding to Brian, who said the way the law is being spun in the media is misleading, and I agree. That's
absolutely
true.
Yeah, I think so too. But here's the thing. I want to start off, because we're going to be saying some things. We're going to be talking about deeper issues. Again, we try to go deeper instead of just talking about what's on the surface. We try to go deeper, and what that means is that I have personal beliefs. You have personal beliefs, and there's going to be a difference. And this is going to sound kind of odd, but there's a difference between. I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's pretty general between us. There's a difference between our beliefs and our position. Like, I have beliefs about this, but in the discussion, I have to take a position of this. A logical position of this. What I mean by that is, as a Christian, as a pastor, as a person who believes that God created us and according to the Bible, knit us in our mother's womb. Like, that's literally, out of Psalms, God is talking about that. So as a Christian, I believe that the point of conception is where life begins, and that is a human being life. That is my personal religious belief, that according to the Bible, and that's my belief, and I'm never going to back down from that. I know that, in my heart, I know that's what it is. That's when life begins, and but as it comes to this discussion of what can be made legal in the United States and what can be done, I don't feel that that can have a play on this. There has to be a logical argument, and there's a limitation to how far that logical argument can go. And I accept that limitation and know that, and that's the discussion really I'm having, that I want to have with you today, is the idea we're going to have this logical discussion. Even though my belief is this, my position has to be this. And then the same way you talking with me before, I know you don't believe that women should just be able to, pull the baby out and kill it before the whole body comes out, and there you go, because it's inconvenient. I don't think that's I don't believe that's your belief in what is right. But because of where you stand politically, there's a certain stance you are forced to take. You have to say, I don't believe in doing that, but I have to take the stance that it's okay for some people to do that.
Well, I don't know that it necessarily follows. For example, there are pro-life atheists out there. There are, I imagine, people who are liberal on every subject. I'm
going off of what you have told me.
Yeah.
So literally, what you not assuming because.
But I am pro-choice.
Yes, you're pro-choice.
So I'm definitely in that camp.
But you don't believe it's right, necessarily okay for a partial birth abortion. You don't like that.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Let me put it to you this way. I don't like abortion at all. I
hate
it.
Exactly.
I think it's awful. However,
this is what I'm talking about.
I support the right of a woman to choose what happens inside her body.
So this is what I'm talking about. We're not going to have a personal, you hate babies and want to kill them, and I just want to rule women and tell them what to do. We're not going to have that stupid debate. That's not what we're doing here, because that's not, even though we have some beliefs, the argument we're having right now is the position is the rational position that we have to take. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now is what is this rational position? And I'm going to state mine right now so you can state yours. But basically what it comes down to, what especially our arguments have come down is life versus autonomy. Mm-hmm. Life versus autonomy. And I believe that life must be protected first, because without life, you cannot have autonomy. So life trumps autonomy. You have to protect life first before you can protect autonomy. And when the two are in conflict, that it's the government's job to get behind and stand up for life before it can stand up for someone's autonomy. It has to protect life first. So that's where that's my logical viewpoint on what government, not based on God, not based on religion, but just based on logic, that governments, and it's part of their duty to protect life. So you have to protect the right to life before you can protect the right to autonomy, because without life, you cannot have autonomy. That's that argument.
You want the government to outlaw abortion?
I know that I can't go that far. So
you can. We have historically.
But I'm just saying, I know there's some limitations on that that we'll get into, but I believe that if there is a life, it deserves to be protected.
Okay.
Even if that means you have to violate someone's autonomy, you have to protect the life first before you can protect autonomy. If there was a way that you can protect life without violating someone's autonomy, that's great. Then that's where I think we should go. But that's my whole argument is you must always protect life first, then you can worry about protecting autonomy. If the two are in conflict, you must protect life first. That's my position.
Okay, well, I've got two statements of position. I think after I've kind of had my say on that, then maybe we can kind of really get into it here. But I want to say, first of all, for me, it's not so cut and dry. I think values shift. They shuffle. So there are times when life will outweigh autonomy, but there are also going to be times when autonomy may outweigh life.
Okay.
Or even when you have life versus life. There are times when one life has to be valued above the other, or like, for example, when the life of the mother is jeopardized by the pregnancy.
Exactly.
That's a certain case. The second thing is, and there's a lot of Christians out there who want the government to outlaw abortion. And one of the things that I never hear them talk about is what happens when you invite Caesar and all of his legions to occupy the woman's womb to protect the baby inside. Once Caesar takes up residence inside the womb, he may not necessarily leave. Nor can you assume that the government of the future will rule in accord with Christian values.
Yeah.
The future government could do any number of things once inside the woman's womb. It could require conception. It could require abortion. It could say certain people are allowed to reproduce, others are not. It could then start to spread like a cancer to other parts of the body and say we're going to harvest Christian organs and give them to good atheists or vice versa or anything. So once you invite the government to tell you what you can do inside your body, that's to me, that's a Pandora's box. And you can't assume that the government of tomorrow will necessarily be pro-Christian.
Right.
And as a result, it kind of baffles me that Christians argue this. So what I would suggest to Christians is they should try to push the moral side of this debate and try to convert people's hearts and get them so that they don't want to choose abortion rather than try to legislate. Because once they start legislating, you open Pandora's box.
Well, legislation is required you need to have laws that protect life.
And it's going to happen anyway.
You need to have laws that protect life. I don't agree. I believe that you are treading into a territory that I think is a straw man argument, because I do not agree that wanting to save the life of a child equals we want the government to control what's happening inside your body. It is simply about saving a life, not that we want to control women or we want to control your body. I don't care what you do with your body. You do with your body, but as soon as you are affecting someone else's life, that life deserves to be protected. So that life happens to be inside of you. We don't care about what you're doing inside of you. We care about that life. So if we can get the life out of you and keep it alive, then cool. That's all we care about. We care about keeping the baby alive, not about controlling women. So you think that people want to put abortion to put them back into control. Hey, it may not be always in your control. That's treading on a straw man argument where you're assuming we want to place control over women, that the pro-life movement wants to place control over women and wants it to be our rules and our control over it, when really the whole thing is just about protecting this life. What's the minimum that we can do to protect this life? Because life is worth protecting. That's why it's pro-life. Not anti-choice, not anti-abortion. The position is pro-life. What can we do to protect the life? And if we can do the bare minimum to protect the life, that's what we want.
We got a couple comments, and I don't want to. We got about 3 of them here. I don't want to get past that, but also you're making this statement about pro-life. What does it mean to be pro-life? What does that really mean?
To protect life, to make sure that a living being has a right to have their life protected. It is a negative liberty. It is a negative liberty in that it is you have the right to your life, that no one has the right to take your life without just cause. If you have violated laws, if you have threatened somebody's life, if you have taken action, if you have taken conscious action to violate someone else's life, then you are forfeiting your life. Outside of that, your innocent life deserves to be protected and not taken away. Doesn't mean pro-life means your life must be provided for. It's a negative liberty. It is a negative liberty of no one has the right to take your life if you have not done anything wrong. So you cannot take innocent life. That's what pro-life is.
So when it comes to providing, let's say, health care for children or education for children,
those are all positive liberties. It's not
in the realm of pro-life.
No, pro-life is you cannot take life. It's a negative liberty. Just like all liberties should be, just like all constitutional rights and constitutional liberties should be. That's what we're standing up for. Pro-life means you cannot take life.
But now it sounds to me, Scott, like you're just being pro-birth.
No, pro-life.
Pro-life
per
se.
No, I'm pro-life because you cannot have your life taken if you have not done something wrong. It's the same. It's simply saying this is a life and you cannot take its life. It's innocent. That's all it is. It's a negative liberty.
So if your employer or pursues business practices or anything that jeopardizes your life, now that would be subject to sanction, right? You're okay with that. That's pro-life policy.
What's
right?
that?
Well, for example, if your employer pollutes your drinking water or if your employer creates hazardous working conditions, obviously those are inconsistent with pro-life, right?
No,
they're not.
There are regulations to take care of, but they are not taking your life.
But if the impact of a certain public policy or a private policy you'll die.
Like if they say you have to walk off this cliff as part of your job and die, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Right.
Because you are taking that person's life. But that's not what you're talking about. You're trying to associate regulation, common regulations with the idea of someone putting a gun to your head and pulling the trigger. They're not the same.
Okay.
That's a red herring. That's not even in the same ballpark.
Let's talk about some of these comments here. First of all, Brian points out that vaccinations will be a crucible. And I have to say, I'm very pro-vax. I think you need to get your shots. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't getting vaccinated, I see that as Darwin's theory at work myself. That's personal. Yeah. However, I do object to mandatory vaccination, and the reason is the government is getting inside your body. Mm-hmm. And I totally understand that there are people who have immune compromised systems and stuff like that. I don't want to go off on that bunny trail right now. I have great sympathy for those people. However, at the end of the day, that autonomy for me outweighs.
So the autonomy outweighs the greater good. If somebody does not want to be vaccinated, they don't have to be.
Well, the thing is, if you're vaccinated and the vaccination works, you're fine. You're not going to catch the measles, let's say, or whatever. Measles is a threat to the unvaccinated community. So once you're vaccinated, you should be protected. Now, the vaccines are not 100% effective, but they're pretty darn effective.
Yeah.
So I want to say that, but I would put autonomy over life in that case, and that you can choose to not receive a vaccination.
Right. But I also think that society could also, without violating, say, we're not going to force you to have a vaccination, but you cannot come over here.
Right. You can't go to a public school or what have you.
You can be quarantined off because, here's these rules here's these things that show that these, and your choice could violate these people's lives. Your choice could cause harm to them. So you can make your choice, but you can't come in with it. I can see that happening. So if you've told me this before, again, I'm going off conversations that you and I have had before, that may or may not have been on air, so I'm kind of bringing this in. Was there a question you wanted to keep on going?
No, there's a few other comments, and I definitely want to. And Terry is suggesting that people check out lifeamendment.org. I imagine it's a pro-life website. I don't know the details. Gotcha. If she'd like to post, I'd be happy to share that with people. Go ahead, Scott.
So basically, if it can be determined that the baby is alive and a human being that deserves to be protected, does that make a difference to you in your view of abortion? Are you still pro-choice if the mother can choose to kill it if it is determined that is a viable. living human being? Does the mother, because it's inside of her, does her autonomy trump that baby's life?
Okay, so you're asking for my personal opinion in this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so my personal opinion is this.
Well, kind of your personal opinion, but also your sorry, I'm asking what you think how policy should be made. Your position.
I think if the child is viable, the woman is not required to keep the baby inside her womb any longer than she wishes. If she wants to expel the baby, then she has the option to do so. And now if the baby is viable outside the womb, I think that the life should be protected in that case.
By law?
By law.
Okay. So
I would support a law to say that I'm not going to tell that woman she can't, evict the baby.
No, but you are going to say it's a viable life. You cannot abort it.
Yes.
You will ban abortion if it's a viable life.
Right, but you can have it removed, and then it would be up to the state or whoever to take responsibility and see if they can't bring that little life to actually be
And here's the thing.
Child.
That's all that I'm talking about. That's all that pro-life is. Like technically, yes. Thank you. Welcome to pro-life.
Wow.
Because that's what it is. That's all it is. That it is a viable life that deserves to be protected.
But the mother's autonomy, the mother's right to choose, I don't want a baby inside me anymore for any reason or no reason at all, must be honored. So,
but
especially those first trimester, those first several weeks where it's not viable.
Exactly. So here's where we have the problem. This is where a lot of people are going to possibly even differ from me. Because this is not going where I thought it was going to go. I thought I was really going to have to convince you to get to that point, but you're already there. You're already at the point.
Well, to me, it's a logical thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. If you'll be pro-life if you listen to logic, and that's what I was saying. You are pro-life.
Now I'm starting to question my position.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying is pro-life means the life of the child must be protected by law. Mm-hmm. Where it gets muddy, that's all pro-life is, that the life of the child, where it gets muddy is when it's a life. That's where it gets muddy.
Well, I don't think that's muddy. I think it's a life from the moment of conception.
I'm saying,
I mean, a sperm cell is technically alive. An egg is technically alive.
I mean,
even prior to conception, you're never not dealing with life here.
Right, but it's an individual. It's new DNA and it's an individual. When is it a human being that deserves protection? That's what I'm saying. When is
it's viable outside of the womb.
Okay, cool. So, but the concept, the idea, this partial birth abortions up to the moment of birth should not be legal. They should not be legal because it's a viable life that's being, it's a viable, innocent human being that's being deprived of its life.
If it's viable. Yeah,
if it's viable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Welcome
to pro-life.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. It seems to me there must be some sort of a gray area or a case that I don't know enough about because I can't think of any reason why they would draft such legislation. I don't think anybody, even the most evil person on the planet, I can't imagine them being so depraved as to say, we're going to take a healthy, viable 9-month baby at full term on its way out to take its first breath, and we're going to kill it.
That's what a partial birth abortion is.
I don't know. To me, I
and
suspect,
it happens in the United States.
But I suspect there's something else going on, such as, for example, maybe the child is being born, but it's not going to live more than perhaps a few minutes or hours. There could be something. There could be some serious birth defect or something going on. I would imagine these are the cases for which the law is being drafted, that there are this narrow, like 0.1% or something like a tiny minuscule number of cases, but they want to make sure that the mother and the doctor...
You really think that they're going through all of this trouble and all this publicity for those little cases?
Well, this could just be one little paragraph in the whole law that everybody is freaking out about because the fake news cycle, being what it is, likes to misrepresent. And you know, again, the objective of the news media is not to inform you. It's to get ratings. It's to get views. It's to make money. So they're naturally going to take this little tiny little thing and they're going to blow it out of proportion. All of a sudden you have people who are aborting, you know, they're giving birth over a shredder, which is just the most ridiculous thing in the world. Yeah. And I don't think this is a serious thing. You know, I don't think it's substantial is what I should say. But there are other cases, for example, when you have rape, incest, life of the mother. Yeah. Now, a lot of pro-life people like to just completely punt. They're like, oh, it's less than 1% of all cases or whatever. Well, yeah, but it's still a case that has to be handled. You can't dodge this. You can't punt this issue.
Right, but at the same time, you can't dodge or punt the issue of partial birth abortions.
I agree.
Because it's the same percentage.
I agree.
It's literally the same percentage. It's about 1.5% are rape, incest, and life of the mother. It's about 1.5%. Like this is the tough part for a person in my position because the images, the discussion, the whole thing of the baby and they're selling baby parts and that whole thing that happened right there and all that kind of stuff is all about third trimester partial birth abortions, which account for less than 2% of all abortions. That 97% of abortions happen in the first trimester.
And I agree that you and I both cannot punt.
You know what I mean?
These difficult issues.
And it's tough because, you know, over 90% of abortions that happen in the first trimester when it's a fetus, when it's not
the size of a pea or a peanut.
Yeah. And now again, my belief is that is still a human being that deserves protection, but in a logical sense, to make law in the United States of America from a logical sense, that's the difficult position to prove. Is the viability of life. But this is great. But here again, as a person who's pro-life, this is what I want to set up. I want to set up the precedence that if it can survive outside the mother, it has the right to be protected. If that is set up as the law, if the law is if it can live outside the mother, then it has a right to be protected, then it's just up to science and medicine to keep pushing that bar back. Then abortions eventually abortion is banned through scientific and medical advancement.
Scientific progress.
Yes.
Maybe so.
And if we can get
about it called Brave New World.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, if we can get to where, no, Josh, 90% is not, again, in my belief, no, it's not all right. Read
the comment.
Yeah. Josh is saying, so 97% of abortion is all right. No, not according to my belief. It's just 97% of abortion is difficult from my position to make an argument logically to protect because it is not viable outside of the mother. So it's very difficult to make that argument without violating the autonomy of the mother.
Welcome to pro-choice, Scott. There you go. See? Logic rules.
So, but again, if we can make it the law to where if it can live outside the mother, then it deserves to be protected, then I think we get the best of both worlds. Women still own their autonomy, but children deserve to be protected. And as medicine and medical advances push that even farther back, push viability even farther and younger and younger and younger, more kids can ultimately be protected. And that's what pro-life is all about. It's about protecting children, protecting innocent life so that it has a chance, so life has a chance to be born. But I wanted to ask you another thing. This kind of, it doesn't take us, it's still talking about abortion, but it goes back to the talk we had about racism in America and particularly the prison system being a racist institution. Because
which it is.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. Why?
Because it disproportionately incarcerates people of color.
What's the percentage?
Oh, I think it's up to half. Could be. I mean, it's pretty substantial.
It's substantial. It's 37, 38%.
Well, how are you defining? Are you including Latinos as well? Or
no, for right now, I'm just saying, just saying
okay.
Black, African American.
Okay, non-whites. Versus, okay.
Yes, so.
Either way.
But still, even though Blacks represent 13% of the population, they represent 38% of incarcerated prisoners.
Right.
So that stat is what makes the institution obviously racist.
Well, no. I mean, at the end of the day, if you do a crime, regardless of the color of the skin, you should be, punished. Yeah. There should be a consequence.
But the racial breakdown you use as evidence to show that the system's messed up.
Well, the reason why also you have that racial component, and it probably gets into why abortion also seems to have a racial component.
Yes.
Which is the systemic poverty and the lack of opportunity that I feel is presented to people who are disproportionately
because
poor.
The percentage is within 2 percentage points. 36% of all abortions are Black children.
And that's horrible.
That's horrible. But why don't if you have no problem saying the prison system is racist, obviously, why don't you have a problem saying abortion is racist?
Well, by the same logic, I would agree that it is. But what I would say is that it's not that
abortion is racist.
It's not. What I would say is it's more an economic issue than a race issue per se. It's an economic issue that is.
But that's not what you said. That's not what you said about prisons, though.
No, it's exactly the same.
That's not what you said, though.
When you have people who live who are disenfranchised, who are poor, who don't enjoy the same opportunities, the same education, the same career paths and stuff that you and I take for granted, when your life is made more difficult simply because of the color of your skin, then obviously not only are you probably more likely to end up in prison, but you're also more likely to say, I'm going to get an abortion. I don't want to have a kid because I cannot support the kid, or I don't want to bring a kid into this world, or any number of terrible situations that motivate mothers to make this decision.
So you want to revamp the Planned Parenthood institution that is racially biased against Blacks in the same way you want to revamp the judicial system and the prison system.
Well, I want to revamp the entire system so that all people have that we have equity in our society. We don't have equity in our society, and that's why most abortions are probably, I actually don't know if there's an economic breakdown for abortions. In terms of whether or not more poor people are more likely to get an abortion than a person of means.
single mothers, first child. These are all the high rates. Low income more than high income. These are all. I don't have the stats exactly in front of me.
Wealthy people get abortions too,
yeah.
But they can then sweep it under the rug and not talk about it.
So Josh is saying, pushing for a first trimester morning after treatment would be a preferable law as a lesser evil. Again, for me and my personal belief system, I don't want that to happen because it's still an individual life but I believe that it is a lesser of two evils, that if we have to make a compromise, then that would be the compromise. That would be the compromise you're making. But again, what I'm wanting to get at is defining life as viable outside the mother. As soon as we can, if we can get that codified, if that can be codified, that if it's viable outside of the mother, then it deserves to be protected. Then that is a huge win for pro-life. Even though right now it doesn't necessarily affect 90% of abortions, it opens the door to saving life in the future while not violating autonomy.
Well, a lot of states have abortion bans after like 22, 23 weeks, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Because that's when everybody pretty much agrees viability is set in.
Yes.
And medical science can do a lot to preserve that life. And then at that point, you want to encourage a woman to choose abortion or some other thing. But up till that point, then the abortion is completely legal and legitimate in most all states.
Here's what this is ultimately what I'm coming to, and this is what's different between what I said about you and what you said about me, and I'll get to that in a second. But if we jump forward 100 years or whatever, and if science can save a child's life at one week, one trimester, as soon as literally at conception, if science has gotten to where there's conception, we can remove it and grow it outside the life of the mother, would you be willing to ban abortion?
Well, for me, again, it comes down to autonomy. And, I don't believe that women should be compelled to grow something inside their body.
Exactly.
Under any circumstances.
Yes.
So
should they be allowed to? The question is, should they be allowed to kill it?
Once we get to a world where children can be conceived and incubated and born outside of the body, we are literally in the world of Brave New World, where children are literally born out of test tubes or decanted, as they called them in the book. And to me, that's a whole other ethical, moral dilemma.
But what I'm saying, it still boils down to the basic idea that I'm trying to get to, which is life deserves to be protected. And if science could get us to the point where life could be protected at conception, would you be willing to ban abortion?
To me, I don't know. It would come. I mean, again, this is not something I've really thought about. So I need time to think on it. But I would imagine the intent of the parents matters. If the parents intended to create life, or if this is simply complete accident, and hey, I want to exercise a buyer's remorse policy or whatever. There are some places where you buy something like you buy a car, and you can take it back within 2 days and say, you know what, I'm going to cancel the sale. I changed my mind.
That's true, but a car is not a viable
life, right?
But what I'm saying is that science if science gets us to the point where a conceived fetus is a viable human life that can be grown outside of the mother, does it not deserve legal protection?
Generally speaking, I would say yes. However, again, what's the standard there? I mean, does the egg have to actually implant in the uterus and essentially root to the placenta and then begin growing? Because, for example, in the status quo, you have the Plan B, you have the morning after pill, which literally prevents the fertilized egg, more or less, as I understand how it works.
Yeah, it prevents it from implanting into the wall. Yeah.
In which case, are we supposed to run in there with a cup or how do we handle that? I don't know.
Elizabeth's saying that will never happen. Yeah, you can't do. It'll never happen. You can't ever do heart surgery on somebody. Oh wait, no. 7 years ago, my daughter had heart surgery. Yes, you can't say medically that can never happen. Science could push us to that. Science could push us to that position.
I mean, if we have some sort of Star Trek type, medical
capability. That's what science fiction is for. That's what the whole genre of science fiction is for, is to push our beliefs, is to create a story in a sense that removes the limitations of our world, to push our thinking of, is your thinking right now the right thinking? Or is it simply the thinking that only the thinking that you can think of because you're limited by your world? What if there was a world that didn't have those limitations? Would your thinking still be right or wrong? And that opens the door to asking you, in general, is your thinking right or wrong?
But
So again, yes, it's a scientific exploration. It's a sci-fi storytelling exploration. But then it leads us to a deeper understanding of what we believe now. Is it simply because, well, that can never happen, so we don't ever have to worry about it? Or what if it does happen? What if it can happen? How does that change what our position is? And if it would change it then, why shouldn't it change it now? Well, so that it would be the right answer now until we get to that position. And especially in this case, what does it hurt? Literally, what does it hurt if we say life must be protected if it's viable outside the mother? I don't want this baby anymore, but it's a viable baby. Fine. You don't have to carry it. We'll take it out. We will grow it. We'll take care of it. We'll pay for it. It's the same thing. You're asking for a medical procedure. Okay, we'll do a medical procedure, but we just won't kill the child. Unless you're trying to make the argument that because it's inside of her, it's her property to decide on, that life is also hers.
Her body is her property.
Right, but the baby's body is not her property.
But as long as it's inside her, she has control. She has control, and then she can evict it.
Right, but kill it?
No, I'm not necessarily saying kill it. Eviction, yes.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
Killing it, no.
Right, so if it's viable, if it is a viable life, and she doesn't want it, then the law should be, yes, we can remove it, but we won't kill it.
But what happens...
Unless you're making the argument that even if it is viable, she still has the right to kill it because it's inside of her.
Well, then let's get into some of these stickier issues here.
Yeah.
What happens, for example, here's a few scenarios. You have a man and a woman who have a one-night stand. They never intended pregnancy. Maybe they even used birth control, but the birth control failed. Who knows, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Accidental pregnancy. What about incest? You have family members who, you have somebody who's abusing a child.
Yep.
What about a child pregnancy? What about, again, the rape thing? This is where, even though those are a tiny fraction of cases, they matter, because if you're going to create this precedent where once conception occurs, boom, we're going to grow the baby, even if it's in a lab.
Because it's a life, and it deserves because it's a life and it deserves to be protected.
But what about those cases where you have buyer's remorse, where you have
does not allow you to murder? Intention?
Okay, and then who takes care of these children?
Who cares? We'll figure that out. Society will take it. I'm saying
that matters.
It does matter, but it matters
because now who's going to feed and clothe these children? Which you argue they don't have a natural right to food or clothing. They just have a natural right to life.
Right.
That's your negative rights thing there.
Yes. So, they have a right to life.
Are we going to give birth to a child and then just let it starve because it doesn't have a right to be fed?
I don't know. But the life must be protected.
You're punting.
No, it doesn't.
I'm just saying you're punting.
I'm saying it doesn't matter to the argument. Their life needs to be protected. Whether or not you think their life. Hold on. Whether or not you think their life has value, whether or not you think they're going to live a good life, whether or not because you're walking into a territory of saying, oh, that person's not going to have a really good high quality of life that doesn't meet a certain standard, so we're going to go ahead and kill that person. That's the argument you're making. Is saying, I'm looking ahead and estimating a life. I'm estimating a value of this person's life. And if it doesn't meet a certain level, then I shouldn't let it live.
I don't know. That's a bit of a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope. That's why I'm saying your position is bad.
When you have a baby, someone's got to take care of it. And who's going to do that? Who's going to take care of the baby? Otherwise, you're just pro-birth and you let the baby starve. That's what the Romans did.
The baby's life must be protected.
Well, Elizabeth here says, sure, think about it. Taking a fetus belonging to that girl out of her body and growing it, not ethical to me.
But killing it is? If it's a viable life that can live outside of the mother, killing it is okay?
Well, I think she's talking about, at post-conception, like right after conception.
Again, we're not pulling the baby out. We're not saying we're going to take your baby away from you. Mm-hmm. We're saying this is a case where you want to get rid of the baby.
Right.
That's fine. Mm-hmm. We're just not going to let you kill it. So we'll take it, we'll grow it, we'll do all this stuff. We're not ripping it out of you and growing it out. You're wanting to get rid of it. Okay, we'll satisfy your wish, but we're going to do that without killing the baby.
But you understand that choice has consequences, right?
Yes, of course. I understand it has consequences, but the life deserves to be protected.
So who's going to bear those consequences?
That can happen. That we can figure that
out later.
Yes, because that is irrelevant to the protection of life. Because your argument, the way you're stating that is saying, if we cannot guarantee that this child is going to have a certain level of quality of life, then we are not going to protect it.
I'm not saying that we have to give this child absolutely everything and
it doesn't matter. I'm just saying.
What I'm saying is it should be a minimum standard. And if we can't provide that minimum standard, we have to weigh what is more ethical and humane. Is it
to keep it alive?
But keeping it alive to starve to death?
To give it a chance of life.
How is that even ethical?
To give it a chance of life.
Because it is better to flush a fertilized egg down the toilet before it achieves consciousness than to have a baby and then let the baby starve. Right? Am I not right here?
You have to start by saving the life.
Oh, okay, we can do that. All right.
Okay, that's all that I'm saying. That's all that I'm saying.
But then that opens another can of worms. And that's something you have to
deal with.
And
that's fine. We will deal with it.
Your concept of negative rights that you're so quick to defend.
And we will deal with it.
The kid gets life, but then the kid doesn't get food. Kid doesn't get shelter or clothing or health care or education. What? Do we really want a world filled with, look at how many pregnancies are terminated just by Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. God is the greatest abortionist of all time. I'll tell you that. Probably as many as half. I have no clue what the stats are. But they're huge. And
again, if I believe in God, that's his right.
Okay, and I'm not going to argue that, but I don't know. Once you're growing children in laboratories, again, Elizabeth is arguing that it's not really ethical to grow babies in labs.
But she's arguing that it's ethical to kill them. That's what I don't understand.
Well, I don't know that she's arguing for that either. I think you're imputing an argument to
Sorry, Elizabeth, and I'm sorry if I'm imputing, but if you're making a big deal about is it ethical to grow in labs, it is way more ethical to grow them in labs than it is to kill them.
Okay, but then how ethical is it to grow them in a lab, have them actually born, and then not feed them or care for them?
I believe
there's over 100,000 children in America waiting for adoption already. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what that number is going to be once we start pulling literally fertilized eggs out of women? Mm-hmm. And take a look at fertility clinics, which will literally fertilize dozens, perhaps even hundreds of eggs. I don't know, but it's in the double digits at least. Mm-hmm. They'll literally fertilize, 20, 30, 40, many eggs. Yeah. And then they choose the one that seems to have the best traits and implant that into the mother. But now what do we do with all those other fertilized eggs? There could be dozens. The same mom and dad. Mm-hmm. Are we going to go ahead and say, all right, well, we're going to put these in the lab. They all get to be born.
That's a very good question.
And now where are we?
Again, it's coming down to where are we defining life. So if it's viable mm-hmm. and can live, it deserves a right to.
But again, if what you suggest is correct, and I have no reason to really be skeptical, I just don't know what the time horizon is on it. But at some point in the future, we may very well be able to create life in a test tube, fertilize the egg, and bring it completely to fruition without ever having to be inside of a woman's body. Mm-hmm. What happens then?
Oh, that's a whole different discussion that I'm not actually having right now. I'm just trying to say, to protect life, it needs to be defined as being viable outside the mother. Mm-hmm. Then let science and medicine push that as far back as it can.
Well, I don't know that it's that cut and dry. I think there's a lot of ethical issues that will develop once we get to those points. Once we start pushing back the horizon on when life is viable outside the womb, I think that opens up a whole nother ethical can of worms. Because again, once these children are born and they're unwanted by the parents, they have to be cared for. And like I mentioned, there's 100,000 children waiting to be adopted mm-hmm. in the United States in the status quo. What happens when that number is many times that figure? What are we going to do?
And then we'll have to answer that. We'll have to answer at that time. That's not the discussion I'm having right now. The
and
discussion
what
I'm having right now is does life deserve to be protected?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we generally agree, but it comes down to how you want to define life, however.
Exactly. And that's the stickler.
But
that's
I also want to warn you.
But again, if we define life as viable outside the mother, then it becomes a medical issue, as it should be. Mm-hmm. Because then it's no longer theoretical. Then it's no longer a religious issue. It's no longer a moral issue. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be happy with that. It becomes a medical issue. And if doctors can push that earlier and earlier, that's a win for everyone. It's a win for everyone.
Yeah,
if we define life as viable outside the mother, then that's a win for everyone. We can save more children's lives mm-hmm. and still maintain the autonomy of the mother. It's a win for everyone if we codify that as law.
I see that, but be careful of inviting Caesar to take up residence in the womb.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not at all what I'm saying. Again, that's a straw man. You're trying to push that straw man argument.
I want to put that warning out there because I think it's a legitimate warning.
Not for the argument I'm making. So that's a great legitimate warning for some other argument, but not the argument we're having right now.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
Wow, we just solved abortion.
Well.
There's a lot of discussion out there. Uh-huh. Man, we did not hit each other. We didn't break into a shouting match or or anything like that.
You can discuss these things.
You can discuss these things dispassionately,
using logic,
and even come to a possible solution that's good for everyone.
You got to go deeper, though. You got to get off the superficial stuff that people are throwing around. The meme level, got to get beneath the meme level.
Because here's where it comes down to where you are pro-life by definition. That if life could be saved, you don't want to kill it. Mm-hmm. And you don't believe that another person has a right to kill it if that life can be saved.
But I am concerned, though, that if the science fiction starts to kick in and become science reality, and now we can start saving,
then it's still a win for everyone.
At conception, it then opens another ethical can of worms that is going to have to be dealt with at some point.
Right. And that might be the trigger that forces society to take the steps that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Maybe it
socialism.
is. So then it's a win for you.
There you go.
So it's a win-win. So there we go.
I want to thank everybody who watched the show and who commented. Elizabeth, Josh.
Yep.
You didn't get a lot of mention. I'm sorry, Josh, but I appreciate you always watching our show and commenting. I want
let us know.
Brian, Jamie, thank you for watching. Elizabeth, thank you so much. And I appreciate all of you. Terry, thank you for coming on in here. And if you are catching the end of the show, Terry, if you want to tell people a little bit more about your organization, about the Life Amendment or whatever, you're welcome to post in our comments and share that.
And we'll try to continue on this. But hey, we're here every Sunday at 5 o'clock on Kerncast and on Valid Answer, stream to a Valid Answer on Facebook. We're here on Mondays at 4 o'clock.
Tomorrow at 4.
Tomorrow at 4, so catch us there. But thank you for joining us. Hope you keep the conversations going and keeping it safe and sane. Until next time. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Till next time, you can say whatever.
That's it.